Welcome to the Metal Detecting Podcast, brought to you by XP Metal Detectors. We're digging the plugs and pinpointing the topics you want to hear. Now here's your hosts, Dave Kimball and Grant Hansen.
This show is brought to you by XP Metal Detectors. XP Metal Detectors is a high-end, innovative metal detector company with high-end metal detectors, coils, and pinpointers. For more information, go to xpmetaldetectors.com. For a dealer near you, try a Google search or go to xpteamusa.com. Hello and welcome to the Metal Detecting Podcast. I'm your host, Dave Kimball, coming to you from Central Oklahoma, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Grant Hansen, coming to you from New Jersey. How's the quarantine going, Grant?
It's going, it's definitely an adjustment. I'm well stocked with food, half healthy, half not healthy, but I've been focused on treating my body right so far, and just dealing with my daughter being home and homeschooled. That's probably the biggest adjustment, but we're getting by. How about you?
Oh, same here. I got a granddaughter living with me, trying to deal with her going to school, and she is bouncing off the walls every day. And as you said, some unhealthy food. Yes, I've been eating a lot of unhealthy food, and I know a lot of people have. It's just hard to get out and do any exercise now. It's hard to eat right. I'm sitting at the desk all the time looking at the computer. My workout before was, walking back and forth on campus, and I go to the gym and everything's closed. So I'm like trying to do home workouts, and I'm trying to be motivated. I'm trying to motivate myself.
Yeah, it's tough. I'm fortunate in that because I work from home normally. So I've got like a full squat rack and Olympic weights and things like that, and kettlebells. So my routine is not being interrupted, but I could see if I didn't have access to that, there's only so much body weight you can really do.
Yes, I gave away a lot of the old workout benches that I used to have and some other stuff because I was going to the gym all the time. I didn't really think I needed. They just took up room here. But now I realize I do need them. And I think after this, I may be becoming a prepper.
Well, I was thinking the same thing. And if you look at like a corner of my basement, it seems like I am a prepper, mostly because of my wife. But we do a grocery delivery once a week. It's really, really hard to get the appointment to get it, or a pickup or a delivery, one or the other, but it's still hard to get that appointment. And then when I was talking to somebody the other day who was loading my trunk with stuff, she's like, you guys did good because the store's bare in there. So you can't feel easy that, I'll just go out and get meat. Like, they might not have it.
Yeah. Everybody thought the preppers are crazy, but they're the ones kicking back at home right now, thinking, looking at us, shaking their heads. Yeah, it's just crazy out there. They're talking on the news about extending this out, like, longer, and they're talking about all the kinds of stuff. I don't know. I think that's all crazy. I think it should be over soon. I don't know.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. In New Jersey, the governor announced this week that schools are closed at least through May 15th. But I'll be surprised if we get our kids back to school this year. Yeah. I don't think it's going to happen.
Yes, I got an email from OU saying that they're talking about shutting campus next fall semester too and doing online all fall.
Oh, wow.
All right. So that's insane. The way I look at it is if we're going to be quarantined for so long and it all dies down here, let's say somebody from another country that hasn't been quarantined that much comes over here and just starts it right over again. And then what are we going to do? We're going to quarantine again for another year?
Right. That's the scary thing. We don't know what's going to happen if people start getting relaxed and they start, getting too close to each other. But I really think until there's a vaccine, we may just have to adjust life for a bit. I don't know.
Even after the vaccine, there could be a new disease. look at the flu, how many strains the flu is. The flu's been killing people left and right for years, and we've never done this.
Right. I keep saying they're going to cut down one too many trees in the rainforest and release this biological menace that we are just not prepared to deal with.
Yes. What was that cartoon where the big black cloud thing, oil-looking thing, come out of them trees in the rainforest?
I don't know that one, but it sounds pretty accurate.
Well, today we got a contest for everybody. Everybody got a chance to win a camo hat. Now, one of them camo hats looks really cool. I don't have one yet, and I want to get one because they are really, really cool looking, and I believe they're fitted too. So, yeah, very cool hats. What we'll do, we'll have the Express News today that everybody's been waiting on, and we're going to give, we have Kendall. He's going to give 3 stories, and 2 of them stories are going to be fake. So you got to guess which one is real. And when you get an answer, then email Grant or send Grant or me a DM on Facebook Messenger. Or, like I said, just email Grant at xpteamusagrant@gmail.com.
Yeah, we've done a contest like this probably a year ago. It was a fun contest, and, it gets people thinking, what's real, what's not real. And I think people, too, they were pretty genuine about it. They weren't trying to Google stories and kind of, doing that research. They were entering honestly. So I'm excited to see what people think. Yeah,
and you did it on last time, and it was very tough for me to realize which one was real. So hopefully Kendall got some pretty hard ones too.
Yeah, I'm excited to see this. So this should be fun.
All right. Yeah, and today we'll be talking to Patrick Cullen, a historian and author of the Battle of the Blockhouse.
Yeah, Patrick is local to me, probably just a couple miles away from where I live. I had the pleasure of seeing him do a lecture one night about his book and going really into detail about the battle, which was in North Bergen and some other towns in New Jersey, which is all paved over right now and pretty urban, so you wouldn't even know that it was kind of like a revolutionary battle site. But he's a real interesting guy. He knows his stuff. Oh, my goodness. He's so smart.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear from him about a blockhouse. I'm not even sure what the blockhouse is, but yeah, I'm over here on the south, so I'm sure it'll be real interested in, and hopefully you'll gain another permission with this one, huh?
I can only try. We'll see. Fingers crossed.
All right, well, we'll be back with Patrick Cullen.
If you are looking for more information about XP products such as dealers or updates, then check out MetalDetectorsAmericas.com.
Hello, this is Daniel from XP Metal Detectors Americas, and I just wanted to let you know about the XP Metal Detectors Americas.com website, which is full of information on the KU's metal detectors and the ORX metal detector. Both are wireless and do all aspects of metal detecting, which is gold prospecting, coins, jewelry, and relics.
This segment is brought to you by Omega Mill Pouches, the official digging pouch of XP Team USA. If you're looking for a rugged, hunt-tested, washable pouch, look no further than Omega Mill. Get on eBay and search Omega Mill Pouches. That's OMEGAMILL.
Tonight we have a great guest. He is a U.S. historian and author of the book entitled 1780, Battle of the Blockhouse of North Bergen, New Jersey. He is also a veteran of the New York National Guard and served New York for the first few months following the World Trade Center attack on 9/11. Let's give a warm welcome to Patrick Cullen. How you doing, Patrick?
Very good, David. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. I'm really excited to speak with you tonight. And just first and foremost, thank you so much for your service to the United States. Can you tell us about your response efforts at the World Trade Center following 9/11?
Well, I was teaching in Harlem at a high school or middle school sort of 20 years ago. And I was actually wearing my battle dress uniforms because it was a publicly funded military-style school. And I had a prep that day, and when the attack happened, I didn't even have a cell phone on me, but a colleague of mine in the teacher's lounge said, "Oh, a small plane just hit one of the towers," and it turned out that we know what happened. Well, we didn't wind up teaching that day. We were just basically babysitting the students, and we wouldn't let them leave until adult guardians had come to pick them up. And I had taken the transportation into the city that day, and everything was free. I got on a bus that couldn't get further than Columbus Circle. I had to walk to the piers from there where the ferries, Anthony Imperial Ferry goes, and I had to get on the ferry. And as I was halfway across the river, Tower 7 just came down of its own. It wasn't even hit by the terrorists, but because of sympathetic vibrations, it went down. So it was I couldn't get to work for several days after that, and I volunteered in my unit to do something over there. And by mid-October, I was working at a pier that was shipping body bags and respirator masks and other things down to the pile, as it was referred to. And by early November, I was actually working there, supervising swing shift security around 12 access control points.
Wow, that sounds like just a crazy, emotional, hectic experience. But again, thank you for doing that.
Thank you. I mean, we all remember what we did when that happened, and now we're going through something right now, about 20 years later, and it is kind of a war too. And I mean, it's like raw nerves, and so we'll get through this. We got through that. We're going to get through this.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that point
Absolutely.
in time. Yeah, that point in time is burned in everybody's memory who was around. I just couldn't imagine being around the city at that time. I'm sure it was very, very hectic.
Yeah, yes, it was. It was there was a chalky smell in the city. I had to drive my wife to work in the city. She was a nurse. She still is. And but yet no one was honking the horns at the time. People were very respectful of each other. Considering the population densities in the Northeast, people were very respectful of each other, and the goodwill lasted for many months after that.
So what sparked your interest in history, and when did you become a historian by profession?
Well, I became interested in history. My uncle would collect a lot of family artifacts and heirlooms in his basement, and one of them was a stand-on-the-floor radio, probably from the 1940s, perhaps, and it still worked. And another thing he had was a type of voice recording machine that didn't use tape. It actually used like a small metal wires that went around, and I heard my great-grandfather's voice, and I never met him because he died a couple of years before I was born, and that piqued my interest. I mean, there's history behind all these artifacts. And also, when I moved to West New York in 1970, I was handed two books, The History of West New York by Dr. Eichmann, a Memorial High School teacher who retired the year I became a freshman, so I never met him, and also a book about the Battle of Bulls Ferry, written posthumously by Charles Winfield. So those three events really sort of got me on the road of being a historian.
Is there a certain period of history that you're especially passionate about?
Well, when I became an adjunct instructor at my undergraduate alma mater, Jersey City State College, I taught Intro to Humanities, and I had to teach ancient Egyptian, Greek, and ancient Roman history. So that I became interested in that, even though I was sort of intimidated at first. But I've always been a fan of 20th century American history.
Oh, yeah. So how does living in New Jersey, which is so rich in American history, how does that help you pursue your passion?
Well, as you know, New Jersey is sort of a crossroads of the Northeast. I mean, you can get to New York, Pennsylvania, and there's so many histories going on in those other two states. There's a lot of battle sites in New Jersey. There's a Fort Lee battle site. There's a park there. They even have a blockhouse replica in Fort Lee, just south of the George Washington Bridge. We're a densely populated state, and there is a lot of history to look at, a lot of historical records to look at.
Yeah. I'm fortunate too, as a metal detectorist, to live in the same area because we certainly have history that goes back a few hundred years.
I've watched several of your the things that you videotape, historical digs along those very historic buildings, and I'm very impressed by what you find.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's a thrill, and then it sparks the imagination too. You find something and you wonder who it had a personal connection to. So it's wonderful. So when it comes to your book, The 1780 Battle of the Blockhouse of North Bergen, New Jersey, what motivated you to write it?
Well, while I was writing a forthcoming book in the history of West New York, I reread the histories of West New York by Dr. Eichmann, and I wanted to know, because he talked about the Battle of the Blockhouse, and I became fascinated by this battle, so I began to reread all the local histories. One of a former councilman of Guttenberg, Walter Glazer, wrote a history of Guttenberg, and he talked about the battle. Indeed, Charles Winfield, before he wrote this posthumous book that was published by William Abbott in 1902 about the Battle of the Blockhouse by Bulsbury, he also wrote an account in the histories of Hudson County in 1874, but that account varied differently from other accounts. So I wanted to know as much as I could about this battle, and then that's why I determined to write my own book about it.
So for those of us who don't really know, what exactly is a blockhouse?
A blockhouse is a defensive structure. They were used extensively in the North America as the defensive structures. You could find them in the French and Indian Wars. They are usually between 10 and 20 foot square on the side, and they're made out of logs. Most of them are of the two-story variety. The blockhouse in North Bergen was of a two-story variety.
Mm-hmm. And that particular blockhouse had a very strategic location. Can you tell us about that?
Well, in the course of my research, I found out that the blockhouse was built in North Bergen at the top of the eastern edge of the Palisades. It could only be accessed by one individual at a time from a subterranean door as part of the structure straddled the top of the cliffs next to a ravine. So it offered a lot of protection for the people inside, and that's why that particular location was chosen.
Yeah, and I'll tell people who aren't familiar with New Jersey geography, up along the Hudson River, you've got cliffs or palisades. So, even one person trying to get through an entrance, I'm sure, was a difficult path.
Yes, absolutely it was. It was treacherous. So the British loyalists knew that they might be under siege by Washington's or any elements of his army. So that's why they chose that's why that area was actually chosen by the British to defend the loyalists.
Why was this blockhouse built? Did the cold winter of the time help drive the need for it?
Yes, absolutely, David. During the cold winter of 1779 to 1780, the Hudson River froze completely. You could walk across from York Island, which is the name of Manhattan, or what we know as New York City today, to New Jersey. You could even walk to Staten Island from either of the lower boroughs of New York or New Jersey. That's how cold it was. So wood was used as a warming source, and it was very scarce in New York. So the wooded areas of North Hudson around the blockhouse were used by the British loyalists to chop down wood for the British Army, and that's why the blockhouse was built.
I can't imagine the Hudson River actually freezing over so solid enough. In my lifetime, I've maybe seen some like mini icebergs in there, like a couple of feet just from the cold. But to be that cold for so long to freeze over, that must have been just horrific to try to live through.
Oh, yeah, I can only imagine. We come home and we just adjust the thermostat and we're as warm as toast, but it wasn't like that. Much of their daily lives was procuring water, food, staying warm, protecting themselves from the elements. So this is a big deal. Wood was worth its weight in gold, perhaps, maybe not that much, but it was very important to keep people warm as a source of fuel and also cooking meals, of course. And, of course, the use in building of the blockhouse.
Mm-hmm. And when doing your research on the blockhouse, pinpointing its exact location was kind of difficult, right? All the different sources varied a bit?
Yes, absolutely. There were multiple accounts from where this blockhouse was actually built. An 1874 account by the preeminent Hudson County lawyer, historian, and author Charles Winfield puts it, quoting from his book, "On the high point above the ravine which extends back from the river on the north side of Guttenberg." Now, a 1908 paper by the author and historian Daniel Van Winkle places it near Bulsbury on Guttenberg Heights. A 1948 book that I mentioned earlier by West New York author, Memorial High School teacher, and historian Dr. Walter Eichmann places it, in quotes, on an elevation in the beautiful glen which at one time separated Guttenberg from North Bergen. And he continues that this fort stood at the bottom of the now filled-in portion of Boulevard East, north of the Guttenberg Veterans Housing Project, and that's where the Summit House currently is by 70 71st Street and Boulevard East. A 1959 book by Guttenberg Councilman Walter Glazer puts it in quotes, on the present Boulevard East at about 72nd Street. This stood on a slight elevation at the bottom of the ravine around which the boulevard now bends, in a section now filled in and occupied by the present apartment houses north of the Guttenberg Veterans Housing Project. So there were multiple variations of where this was, and none of them, since they were not in agreement, I realized I had to do more research, and that's what I did.
So with the blockhouses, is there any like existing replicas of a blockhouses now, or any still standing?
Yes, well, there is one in the Fort Lee Historical Park. It's just south of the George Washington Bridge. It can be accessed on River Road, and there's, I believe there's free parking there. There's a museum there, and along the trail near the museum, there's actually a blockhouse that was put up by the people of Fort Lee. And Todd Brasted, who's the most knowledgeable person about history that I know of in New Jersey, was instrumental in having that thing built. His knowledge and expertise of the Revolutionary battles in and around Bergen County, he directly contributed to having that thing built, and he's a past president of the Bergen County Historical Society.
Yeah, and I'm thinking back about what you were talking about with the different accounts of where the blockhouse was. I think resonates probably with a lot of people listening right now, because when we're doing research and we're looking at maps and old references, we're trying to find that spot, and finding that spot, it's almost like a treasure hunt. Which X on the map is actually right?
Exactly. He found the Holy Grail, and the Holy Grail was a letter that was written by a British General Patterson to Major Lum, where he was ordering 100 soldiers to be sent from Paulus Hook up to literally 1/2 mile below Bulls Ferry, and below Bulls Ferry would mean south of Bulls Ferry. So, and on the ridge of the mountain. And so what I did was I drove my car at the bottom of Bulls Ferry Road, and that is right across the street from where the actual Bulls Ferry was. And I set the odometer, the mileage configuration to 0, and drove 1/2 mile south and looked up, and that's where I saw the location of where the blockhouse stood. And Mr. Winfield, who corrected his 1874 account of that, where the location was, he had access to a letter that was written April 30th by General Patterson to Major Lum that the New York State Historical Society had cataloged in 1875. And that's why in 1880 he revised his account of that and actually described exactly where the blockhouse was, because 1880 was the centennial of the Battle of the Blockhouse, and he was actually there, and he could actually see the traces of the outline of the blockhouse. The blockhouse was later burned and destroyed by the British. They didn't want the Americans to use it, so they destroyed it. And he actually saw the outlines of the blockhouse. He actually described it literally by using fixed known points where the ravine was, and that's how I was able to actually determine exactly where the blockhouse was.
That must have been such an exciting discovery for you.
It was like an aha epiphany moment. It really was. A hair was standing on the top of my head. I could almost feel the follicles right now, just standing there, reaching the hairs up. And I was very happy. I was very happy about that, because Winfield had done that in 1880, but it seems like it was forgotten about. You only had this 1880 discovery that it was written down in the American History magazine. I'm not sure about the circulation of that. And then in 1902, when the same account was published by an amateur historian and publisher, William Abbott, there was only about 250 copies that were printed, 50 large print editions and 200 small print editions. I have both versions of them. So I have two of the only 250 copies of Winfield's posthumous book of the correct location that are in existence. So I'm glad that West New York Library had a copy of that, because it piqued my interest when I was 10 years old, and I rediscovered it a few years later when I was writing the history of West New York.
No, that's great. That's great. Hey, can you tell us about the battle? Why did it happen?
Okay, let's see. Why did it happen? Well, there were, on the British Loyalist side, there were 138 up to 150 Loyalists that were defending the blockhouse, which was commanded on paper by the former Albany mayor and Loyalist Colonel Abraham Cuyler, but on the day of the battle, July 21st, 1780, by Captain Thomas Ward, who was a former sergeant from the Continental Army, of which he had deserted from. Among the defenders were Lieutenants Absalom and George Bull, who operated Bull's Ferry, which was a half-mile north of the blockhouse. The American side was led by Brigadier General Anthony Wayne, who had led a daring and successful raid on a British stronghold at Stony Point just a year before. Stony Point is just south of Bear Mountain, and this daring raid earned him a Congressional Gold Medal. So that was a big deal for him. General Wayne was in charge of the Pennsylvania line, which consisted of 2 brigades with 8 total regiments. He also had a detachment of 4 6-pound cannon batteries from Colonel Proctor's artillery regiment, a total on the American side of 2,000, although only had 4 regiments at the actual battle. The 1st, 2nd, 9th, and 10th regiment were at the battle. There was an artillery detachment was actually at the Battle of the Blockhouse as well as the 4 regiments. The 6th and 7th regiments were deployed near Fort Lee as lookouts for the British, who were actually looking towards what is now known as New York City for the superior British forces to see if they were going to try to attack. A field officer, that would be someone with the rank of major, lieutenant colonel, or colonel, was placed with a contingent of 100 men to guard New Bridge. At the bridge there was the Americans' route of escape, only route of escape, should they be pursued by the British, because Hudson Bergen Neck, as it was called, would be referred to the peninsula that exists most of eastern part of historic Bergen County, which is the eastern part of Hudson County between the North River, Hudson River, and the Hackensack River. There's basically a peninsula that starts from Bergen Point, the tip of Bayonne, and that goes up to just past Fort Lee. And as you go to the west, New Bridge is the only bridge that the Washington needed to use to escape from the British. And Moylan's cavalry was also used to round up several head of cattle, from Loyalists, because there were a lot of Loyalist strongholds in Bergen Township at the time from the Three Pigeons Inn, and that was located in what is now known as North Bergen by Bergen Turnpike and Grand Avenue. The battle occurred because the Americans were tired of Captain Ward's Loyalist refugees, as they called themselves, raiding Patriot homesteads and plundering the countryside. General Wayne requested permission from His Excellency General Washington and was granted the same. After the battle, General Wayne revealed in letters to Colonel Delaney and Johnson, who was in Philadelphia, that the larger purpose of this battle was actually to divert the British attention away from any attempts on the French fleet and army, which had recently landed in Rhode Island. Now, we couldn't have won the decisive Battle of Yorktown, which occurred after this battle, about a year or so after this battle. We couldn't have won that battle without the French help. So that was the real purpose of attacking the British at this blockhouse.
Oh, yeah. So how long did this battle endure?
It started around midday on the 21st of July, David, and it lasted for about 75 minutes until the Americans basically ran out of ammunition, and they got reports from Zebulon Pike of Pike's Peak, of future Pike's Peak fame, that there was a British contingent coming down the river. So the Americans were afraid of that, and so they decided they had a war council in the field of battle, and they determined to, at that time, to direct Moylan's cavalry to round up the cattle and then to get back to over the safety of New Bridge as quickly as possible.
Yeah, speaking of running out of ammunition, what kind of artillery did each side have access to?
The Americans had 4 6-pound bronze cannon, which had a maximum range of about 3,000 feet. The Loyalists had 2 4-pounders. I'm not sure what the range of the 4-pounders were, and they were firing them from the second floor of the blockhouse.
We'll be right back with Patrick Cullen.
Hi, this is Dave D.
Hi, this is Sonia.
R.C. Dunn.
This is Alan. Yeah. We're the Minnesota Beach Boys.
This is Kendall.
This is David Kimball.
This is Grant Hansen.
Center.
Lynn Quelland.
Hi, this is John.
Josh Kimmel.
Cameron Macer.
Pete Sorrell.
And we are
XP Team USA.
And you are listening to the Metal Detecting Podcast.
This is Michael from XP Metal Detectors Americas. Be sure to check out the new XP ORX metal detector, model starting at $649.
And we're back with Patrick Cullen. So in your book, you catalog an extensive collection of correspondence related to the battle. Where'd you find all these original letters?
Well, a majority of the primary source documents, David, and this mostly muster rolls from 39 of the 72 companies that fought at the battle or in support of that battle, I found at the Pennsylvania Historical Society in Philadelphia. Most of the letters were actually found by Todd Brasted. I mentioned him before. Without his book, A Nest of Tories, which I have to put a plug plug-in for this book, which is available from the Fort Lee Museum. He actually received a grant to write this book, and it's $20 is worth every penny of it. I couldn't have written my book in my current form without the research he did in his book, A Nest of Tories. It definitely made a difference. And I also got some of the other primary source letters from the earlier research of Charles Winfield.
Was it difficult obtaining permission to view the letters?
No, not at all. The Historical Society of Philadelphia has a policy of how many you can look at a time. They want you to be very careful about that. They don't want you to bring in any other materials from outside. You can take some notes. They allow you to take photographs. They even will make photocopies for you, but they definitely don't want you to bring pens in there. You use pencils. They're very courteous. I felt like a kid in the candy shop when I was handling, because I've never done anything like that in my life. And again, I have to give a shout out to Todd Bracey, because he actually went around the world doing the research in his book, in which he also talks about this battle, but it's more a broad look at this battle. And I walked in his footsteps, basically, and it was like an aha moment. So I have to really give a shout out to him. But again, they were very helpful at the Historical Society.
So was it challenging deciphering not just the language they used, but the penmanship at the time? I've seen facsimiles of these types of things, and it's often really grand cursive and letters I don't recognize. So how hard was that?
Well, I recalled, it's a good question, Graham. I recall seeing, sometimes you'll see what appears to be an F and it actually is an S. So I remember that. They use weird abbreviations. They like to use a lot of abbreviations, and they like to capitalize not even proper names, but just nouns. They seem to capitalize a lot of nouns. There were a lot of misspellings of the word sergeant. Sometimes it was spelled with J's. Other times it was spelled with a G's. Sometimes it was S-A-R-G-E-N-T, S-E-A-R-G-E-N-T, S-E-R-G-E-N-T. A lot of variations of that. And some people have better penmanship than others. But these were 240-year-old documents that were some sort of vellum, some sort of like woven material that has standed the test of time. They were probably carried in somebody's saddlebag. Lieutenant Colonel Joshua Harmer was the Inspector General, and he took these muster roll reports. He signed his name at the bottom. He wrote out a number of these reports. These are living documents that were made to last for years and years. You know, we have books that are literally like called Pulp Fiction because they're literally not worth the page they're printed on, but these pages will last for another several hundred years if we take care of them.
Oh, wow. Yeah, so over 250-something years old. So the material that the letters were written in and everything else was how they survived? Or why do you think they survived all this time? Is it the historical significance?
Well, I don't want to get supernatural in the answer. I think it's a scientific reason. It was the high-quality woven fabric that they will put on, the pigment of the inks that they used, and they were well kept. I guess they were kept in the cool, dry areas. And then once we became a republic, then I don't know the history of the Historical Society and how that came about, but I'm sure they used scientific methods to preserve those documents. So I'm very grateful that they're there for everyone to go and see.
Now, talking about the actual correspondence, because I had the pleasure of hearing you speak through it, and I've got a copy of the book. You catalog accounts of the same events, but because they were written by different people on different sides of the battle, the interpretation of the events were a bit different. Can you give examples of that?
Yes, there are several examples here. Let's see if I could find one of them. Let's go to page 18 of our book here. There is an account from a Major Thomas Moore of the 9th Pennsylvania Regiment to General Washington. Now, this is May 22nd of 1780. He's doing reconnaissance of the blockhouse that has been observed. And he states there's a post that they, meaning the British loyalists, are about establishing at Bull's Ferry upon the North River, which they have erected a blockhouse 20 feet square of logs. The work is at present defended by 70 refugees. I am told they have mounted a small piece of artillery in each face and have surrounded it with an abatis. Under cover of this work is a store stocked with an assortment of European merchandise, which is vented for hard money or provision. When they arrived at at this post, my opinion of the chief part of the inhabitants was such that I did not think a march could be conducted through the country without knowledge of it arriving so quickly to the enemy as to frustrate the purposes of any enterprise that might be attempted against them. But from the secrecy with which I conducted my route to Newbridge, I think it is in my power to surprise and bring off this garrison at Bullsbury. So he's asking permission, and I'm not sure. Apparently he did not get the permission from General Washington at the time. Now, let's see, on page 41, I have a British account of this blockhouse. One of the engineers, from the Britain's Corps of Engineers, Lieutenant William Friars, to Sir Henry Clinton. Sir Henry Clinton was the supreme British commander in North America, and he says, report of the state of the refugee post on the west side of Hudson's River. So he's calling it Hudson's River. The American was calling it the North River. On the 11th of July, 1780, this is 10 days before the battle, the defenses of the post consist of a substantial two-story blockhouse with 2 4-pounders in the upper story, a strong stockade which runs in right lines from the right and left of the blockhouse to the edge of the precipice, and an abattis surrounding the whole at the distance of nearly 60 yards from the stockade. Then he says the refugees are lodged in the area included by the stockade, and they are in number about 100, but being laboriously employed during the day, they can afford few men for duty at night. The ridge of the hill in front of the abattis rises gradually till it becomes about 40 feet higher than the base of the blockhouse at a distance of 300 or 400 yards. To this spot, an enemy can approach with cannon and security. And I'd just like to stop there. By the way, both of these primary source documents, again, were found by Todd Brasted. So I just simply put them in my book and gave him credit for it, as any historian must do. The area he's talking about that would be a good spot for cannons to fire from is probably Bergen Line Avenue. That'd be about 900 feet or so due west of where the blockhouse was. There are other examples of actually the aftermath of the battle that I would also like to show as an example. The American side, this is a letter of General Wayne's division orders that he wrote 2 days after the battle that was ordered to be read by his officer to all the men. It is with infinite pleasure that General Wayne acknowledges to the worthy officers and soldiers under his command since the 20th instant, which means most recently, that he never saw a more true fortitude than that exhibited on the 21st by the troops immediately at the point of action. Such was the enthusiastic bravery of all ranks of officers and men that the 1st Regiment, no longer capable of restraint, rushed with impetuosity over the abattis and up to the stockades from which they were with difficulty withdrawn. The contagion spread to the 2nd, but by the united efforts of the field and other officers of each regiment, they were at last restrained. The general fortunately would not admit of the further advance of the 10th Regiment and the situation of General Irvin. He was the commander of the other brigade that was involved, part of the Pennsylvania line, and the other troops prevented them from experiencing some loss of men. As the same gallant spirit pervaded the whole, they probably would have shown the same eager desire for close action. And then he goes on further, but rather than keep reading his, I'd like to read the British account from Sir Henry Clinton to Lord Germain. Henry Clinton, again, was the commander-in-chief of the British forces in North America, and Lord Germain was the British Foreign Secretary for North America. So, sort of like the Secretary of State, so to speak, and coming right to that page. And this is for August 20th, a month after the battle. I have the satisfaction of communicating to your lordship an instance of courage which reflects the greatest honor on a small body of refugees. About 70 of them had taken post on a part of the opposite shore of the North River called Bullsbury, where they had fortified themselves with a blockhouse and stockade to be protected in cutting wood. The labor they were employed for their maintenance. A corps of near 2,000 rebels under their generals Wayne, Irving, and Proctor. He got that wrong. Proctor was not a general. With 7 pieces of cannon, well, we know it was 4 pieces, not 7, made an attack upon them on the 21st ULT period, notwithstanding a cannonade of 3 hours. The actual attack was an hour and 15 minutes, almost every shot of which penetrated through the blockhouse. And in an attempt to carry the place by assault, they were repulsed by these brave men with the loss of a great many killed and wounded. The exertions of the refugees did not cease. After having resisted so great a force, they followed the enemy, seized their stragglers, and rescued from them the cattle that they were driving from the neighborhood district. So there's 2 examples of how people see things from opposing points of view. I remember when I was in education, I remember that we were taught to teach the students, that there's more than one way of looking at things. Like 101 Dalmatians, for example, we can look at the struggle of the husband and wife and how they're trying to shepherd their 100 Dalmatians from the clutches of Cruella de Vil. But we can also look at the story through the eyes of Cruella de Vil. Why does she feel aggrieved? Why does she keep pursuing these dogs? There's always two sides to a story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it seems like in this case, the authors of this correspondence, they're selling themselves a bit, right? They want themselves to come off in a good light.
Of course. It's all political. It's all politics. Doing damage control because the final analysis, this was a failure for the Americans in the point that they couldn't dislodge the loyalists. But on the other hand, they did make the blockhouse inoperable because the loyalists wound up abandoning that site and then destroying it anyway. So it was sort of both sides can claim some victory out of that.
Oh yeah. So I really see your passion in this significant historical event. I'm sure this was a great motivation for writing this book. What all did you learn while writing this book?
Oh, let's see. To think about, a book takes a lot of patience, coming up with a thesis. What are you trying to prove here? I was trying to find the exact location, and thank God I was able to find that location. I learned that there are multiple points of view, and that sometimes facts you have to go through both sides to get to arrive at the conclusion. History is a social science. It's not a hard science, and we know that ice freezes at 33 degrees. But why does it freeze? That would be maybe more of an introspective question to answer, and historians sometimes have to try to fill in the gaps. So that's what I've attempted to do, to fill in the gaps.
And one thing that I learned that I didn't know about a tactic for battles is how trees were used as an obstacle for defense. I remember you talking about that. Can you remind me what that term was when they cut a tree down and laid it on its side so that it would be really hard to pass through?
Yes, it was known as an abatis, and I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it with the correct inflection, but it was basically they would chop the tree down and they would face the pointed edges towards the enemy. And there is some indication that the abatis was successful. Not only did they have the abatis, but they also had stockades, which are narrow pieces of wood that were mounted up. They stood up about 8 or 10 feet in the ground. They might have been about 8 to 10 inches wide, and they were barriers. They were within the stockade area. And when the Americans became frustrated that their 6-pound shells weren't heavy enough to do the intended job of knocking down the blockade, the 1st and then the 2nd regiments, which was providing cover for the cannon battery, they rushed at the blockade, and that's when most of the American casualties occurred. But a lot of them were found by the stockades, and perhaps some of them were found in and near the abatis. So there is some anecdotal evidence that the abatis did serve as a deterrent.
Yeah, your book is packed with a lot of great historical information and firsthand accounts. If someone was interested in purchasing your book, how would they go about that?
Well, I only have between 5 and 10 copies left. So they could write a letter and write a check out for $10, and they could send it. The check would be made out to me, Patrick Cullen, P-H-E-R-I-C-K. Last name is C-U-L-L-E-N, and it would be addressed to Patrick Cullen, West New York Museum, care of West New York Public Library, 425 60th Street, West New York, New Jersey, 07093. I laid out all costs to publish this book, and it was published by 48 Hour Books in Akron, Ohio, and it cost me $7.60 to actually print out each book, and the proceeds, the balance would be $2.40 is going to the library. Actually, I misspoke. They could purchase my book in person at the library. They could Google the website of the West New York Public Library and go to departments, and they could actually find the information as to when my hours of operation are. However, if they want to receive the book, and if they live in the lower 48, they could add $5 for shipping and handling to the $10, and because I send things out media mail mail, and then they will receive their book shortly after their check clears.
Great. Thank you. And if anyone listening has issues or trouble finding that information, feel free to send me a message and I'll get it off to you. Patrick, thank you so much. I mean, I could spend hours talking to you about this. And I know we've had some offline conversation through email. So I really think our listeners enjoyed this conversation tonight. Thank you for all your knowledge, all your research, all your passion. Really, really appreciate it.
Well, I thank you what you both do, both Grant and David. And I'm just hoping that the 240th anniversary of this battle is coming up in July. And I'm not sure when the town of North Bergen may choose to celebrate that and put the marker there. But I certainly hope that if they're going to reach out to any medical detectorist, I hope that it's you. I hope they give you permission to do that, because I've seen your videos. I've had the chance to greet with you and speak with you, and I can see how passionate you are about your craft. And I hope that if they decide to try to unearth their past that way, that they reach out to you.
Well, I hope so too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That would be nice.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and it was great listening to you. I learned a lot. That's very interesting stuff.
Thanks a lot, David, and thanks a lot for what you do, because maybe you'll find something new that will actually change, revise what we know about history. Maybe you'll find something that will maybe even change what historians know about certain battles. So you do it a great service, because our knowledge of history is only as current as what we know at any given time. So thanks for what you both do.
Yeah, thank you so much. And, maybe we can have you on again sometime and talk some more history. And, we'll look forward to that.
All right.
Okay, all right. Definitely look forward to doing that. Thanks again.
All right.
All right, take care.
Yeah, see you.
You too.
Check us out online at xpteamusa.com.
This is Express News with Kendall Atkins.
Hey everyone, this is Kendall bringing you this special contest edition of Express News. As the guys just explained, I'll be reading you 3 metal detecting related news stories. The catch? Only one of them is real. The other 2 are straight out of my imagination. Here's how the contest works. Your job is to identify the one true story and send your answer to Grant and Dave. I'm sure the guys will give you all the details, but I can say our winner will end up with some sweet XP team swag. So let's get to it. Here's our 3 stories. A metal detectorist in Tennessee recently uncovered a rather unnerving military relic. The man, who wished to remain unnamed, was detecting when he dug up a, quote, historical artifact that's best left alone, a live and unstable World War II mortar round. The Tennessee Highway Patrol sent bomb technicians to confirm it was indeed a live mortar round. Quote, the mortar was too unstable to move a long distance, so it was moved to a safe area and detonated, the department wrote in a Facebook post. Investigators believe the round was left over from when the area was used as a training ground during World War II. Fort Campbell, an Army facility near the Tennessee-Kentucky border, sent experts to confirm this was indeed a World War II-era mortar round, and the area was searched for other explosives before the scene was released and deemed safe. The big boom that followed the controlled detonation was heard more than 13 miles away. Fortunately, no one was injured. Here's our next story. With the city of New York strictly enforcing social distancing rules, many once popular and crowded public spaces have become almost entirely emptied out. One such place, Central Park, has often intrigued metal detectorists. The park opened back in 1858 and has been visited by 1 billion people in the last 162 years. It is a tempting proposition, 843 acres of dropped coins and relics. But it's illegal. According to Police Sergeant Luis Morales, quote, we've made several arrests. Metal detecting is prohibited in Central Park. The New York City Parks Enforcement Patrol and NYPD are still actively patrolling the park and enforcing city laws. City code includes the seizure of any recovered items as well as the violator's metal detector. The city plans to give the over 60 historic coins and other relics to the New York Historical Society for display, and the confiscated metal detectors will be sold at auction. Let this be a lesson to our listeners. Don't break the law, people. Our final story comes to us from the state of Massachusetts. According to the local online news, 74-year-old retired school teacher William Tenney made an absolutely incredible find with his metal detector. Quote, I taught high school history for 50 years, Mr. Tenney said. When I retired, I decided to get a metal detector. It's good exercise, and I've found some interesting artifacts, end quote. On March 16th, Mr. Tenney called his longtime friend and asked for permission to metal detect at his 1772 homestead in central Massachusetts. That's when he uncovered an astonishing silver coin, a 1795 draped bust silver dollar. Quote, "It was so clean, I knew exactly what it was. It wasn't until later I learned how valuable it was." Mr. Tenney has put the coin in his safety deposit box and has no plans to sell it. He hopes his grandchildren will appreciate its historical value. I tried to find Mr. Tenney on Facebook after reading this story, but he apparently does not use social media. All right, folks, there you have it. Now, remember, only one of these 3 stories is true. Is it the story of a Tennessee man who unearthed a live mortar round? The illegal metal detecting in Central Park? Or the retired school teacher who found a draped bust silver dollar? Your job is to decide which is the true story and send your answer to Grant and Dave. They'll give you all the instructions. Thanks for listening and stay safe.
And we're back, and that was Kendall Etkins with the Express News. Can you guess which story was true?
I'm going to have to sit and think and maybe re-listen to it a couple more times and try to figure out which one was true. It was a tough one. Good job, Kendall.
Yeah, great job. And for whoever guesses the right story, the true story, just email Grant Hansen at xpteamusagrant@gmail.com or send us a DM on Facebook Messenger, and you'll be put into a contest. We'll do a drawing, and you'll win a free camo XP Team USA hat, and we will announce that on our next show.
Yeah, so we'll take everybody who guesses correct, make a list, put them in a randomizer, and choose one lucky winner. So good luck, everybody, and thanks for playing.
Yeah, and that was great talking to Patrick Cullen. I learned a lot. Man, that sounds like a great place. I'd love to go out there detecting.
Yeah, it's tough because, like I said earlier, it's pretty urban. There's not a lot of grass, not a lot of places to dig. There might be a few places, so we'll see. I mean, there's got to be some wonderful history to unearth and preserve, and it would be great to get some things that could be displayed for the cities. And we'll see. Otherwise, the education that Patrick has provided us helps the memories live on, and we can really learn a lot from it.
Yeah. I mean, how cool would that be if you actually got that permission? I mean, he's gunning for you, man. He's out helping you.
I hope so. We'll see. I always say cautiously optimistic, but I think Patrick knows that I'm an honest guy. I'm not in it for personal gain. I'm in it for the preservation of the history. So, if things work out, I'll do my best. And if I can even find one little thing that maybe the library could put on display or something at town hall, I think that would be really special.
Oh, yeah. And you definitely should have somebody follow you around with a camera and get some great footage.
Yeah, I think I would definitely do that. Either that or just film myself.
Yeah, and check out our Facebook page, XP Team USA. We also got XP Team USA News. Also, check us out, XP Team USA, on YouTube. We got a lot of great shows. A lot of our team members are putting stuff out left and right. Grant's got some great videos of him finding some coppers and all kinds of cool stuff.
Yeah, and Gary Blackwell just released a video this week all about the ORX. It's everything from unboxing and an overview of all the features. So if you've ever been thinking about it or just want to see what it's all about, check out that video. Really, really good video.
Yes, great video. Great thing to watch if you're thinking about it. Like he said, if you're considering getting an ORX, check it out. He's also got videos of you showing how to do it, how to use an ORX, different settings to use, their capabilities. I mean, everything.
Yeah, it's a full resource on that. So go over to the XP Metal Detectors YouTube page or Gary Blackwell's YouTube page as well.
Yeah, and don't forget to check out another podcast called Beyond Sight and Sound with Josh Kimmel. He's very interesting, and he's got a really active chat line while he's going.
Yeah, he goes live every Sunday night and every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. So definitely check him out. If you can get on when he's live, join the chat. If not, everything like our show, it's archived, so you can check it out anytime.
Oh, yeah. All right. Well, that's all we got today, and we will see everybody on May 1st.
May already. Oh, okay. We'll see you then.
All right. See you.
Get that permission, put the coil to the soil, and we'll catch you next time right here on the Metal Detecting Podcast, brought to you by XP Metal Detectors.